In 2017, the world was treated to one of the most critically acclaimed video games in history, The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Reviews swept all across the internet, praising the latest installment to the Zelda franchise for its open world and immersive gameplay. It broke the shell used by past 3D Zelda games and gave fans something new and unexpected that has never occurred before in the series. It seemed like this was just the beginning for a new age of Nintendo that would certainly last throughout the next decade. To get my own personal opinions out of the way, I love The Legend of Zelda. It is by far my favorite game series. Every time a new Zelda game is released or even announced, it feels like it's Christmas morning. Up until the release of BOTW, I had played several other Zelda games, my favorite being Twilight Princess. But something clicked with me and Breath of the Wild. From the Resurrection Shrine all the way up until fighting Ganon, I was encapsulated by all Breath of the Wild had to offer. I don't really know what it was, even to this day. Maybe it was the soft twinkle of piano chords spurred randomly throughout Link's journey in Hyrule. Or maybe it was the beautiful scenery stretching out as far as you could look. Whatever it was, it won me over, and thus dethroned the spot held by Twilight Princess for so long, becoming not only my favorite Zelda game, but one of my favorite games of all time. It's now been almost 2 years since the release of Breath of the Wild, and I, like many other fans, have one question on our minds. What's next? Fortunately, we have quite a bit of information to go off of. But before we get into it, we have to distinguish a few things. My predictions for the next Legend of Zelda game are not based on the 2019 Link's Awakening remake. They're going to be predicting what will most likely be the 2021 Zelda game. Although this may seem obvious to some, I just want to put it out there so there's as little confusion as possible. And yeah, if you did not know, Nintendo announced a remake for Link's Awakening coming to the Switch sometime around 2019. I'll have a link in the description for the trailer if you guys want to check it out. It looks pretty cool. Alright. Before I start talking about what my predictions will be for the upcoming game, let's make some educated guesses on what its core structure will be. We already know that the game is in development. This was confirmed by AGL Numa. Everything beyond that is pretty much up in the air. But I feel like it's pretty safe to say we can heavily rely on the 3 aspects I'm about to list. 1. It will be a 3D game. 2. It will be an open world. And 3. It will retain the same engine and physics used in Breath of the Wild. All of this information comes from a great article by Dream Team. I'll have it linked in the description below if you want to read the full thing. The reason why we can heavily infer that this next game will include these 3 tenets is literally due to the massive success of Breath of the Wild. Nintendo knew they struck a goldmine after the release of the game, but they're only at the tip of the iceberg. If they can keep the same layout, but improve on the things that fans asked, we're going to be seeing a game that is even better than Breath of the Wild. Alright, with all the setup and everything out of the way, let's get into what my actual predictions and the reasons behind them are for the next 3D Legend of Zelda game. To start off, I'm going to say that the next 3D Legend of Zelda game will be a prequel to Breath of the Wild, meaning it will be on the same Breath of the Wild timeline, but it's going to happen before the events of Breath of the Wild. Here's my reasonings for that. 1. In the article that I have linked below, game director Hiromaro Fujibayashi said that he cannot confirm whether or not it will be a sequel or a continuation of the timeline. But I would say it's pretty safe to bet that it will stay along the Breath of the Wild timeline. And I have a few other reasonings for that. My second one is that in the events of Breath of the Wild, after you beat Ganon and everything happens, there's really nothing left to do besides rebuild Hyrule. Not much of a story. Ganon will always return, as foretold by the prophecy, but it probably won't happen for another 10,000 years or so. Way past the lives of this current Link and Zelda. and I doubt fans really want to go that much more into the future. 10,000 years was already a pretty big stretch for Zelda, for me at least. We know it does exist in the timeline of the entire Legend of Zelda canon, but we don't know which fork it extends from, and we aren't positive because it's just so far in the future, so it's hard to tell. But the real big reason that I have to believe that it's going to be a Breath of the Wild prequel is because Nintendo's already given us so much information about the calamity that happened 10,000 years ago before the events of Breath of the Wild. During the scene when you first meet Impa in Breath of the Wild, she tells you the story of the original calamity and how Ganon was sealed.
The history of the royal family of Hyrule is also the history of Calamity Ganon, a primal evil that has endured over the ages. This evil has been turned back time and time again by a warrior wielding the soul of a hero and a princess who carries the blood of the goddess.
I personally thought it was a really cool concept with the old Sheika technology being at its prime, along with the relationship between the Sheika and the Hylians. I think Nintendo may have purposely implemented this knowing they could expand the story with a sequel, or in this case, a prequel. Beyond that, there really isn't much more to go off of when predicting the timeline placement for the next Zelda game. But to me at least, there's just something that speaks volumes about the Tapestry cutscene. Nintendo is always thinking ahead, and I wouldn't really put it past Aonuma to insert clues into the game foreshadowing for what will be coming up in his next title. These next predictions will be a little bit more rapid fire. The only reason I took so much time to explain the prequel theory is because of how much information that I had for it and the evidence given. Anyways, here's 11 more predictions for the next 3D Legend of Zelda game. 1. The game will be set 10,000 years before the events of Breath of the Wild, aka the first calamity. This is pretty self-explanatory given the reasoning that I had in my prequel theory. 2. Other Sheika Slate uses. I think it'd be pretty cool to see things that the Sheika Slate could have done in the past that it can no longer do in the future. Kinda similar to what Call of Duty did with Black Ops 4. Even though it's the next installment of the game, it's a prequel to Call of Duty Black Ops 3, and we see tech and gadgets that were used in the past that are no longer used in the future. 3. New areas of Hyrule to discover. A bigger map is basically given. Considering how popular open world games are, and how massive Breath of the Wild was and how much people loved it, it's safe to assume we will get a map that's nothing short the size of Breath of the Wild. 5. More voice acting. This is the first time that the Legend of Zelda series introduced voice acting into the game. Although it was just used in cutscenes, I'd like to see more of it in a future title. I love the voices of all the champions in the game, especially Mipha and Daruk, but Zelda was my favorite by far. Absolutely amazing work done by Patricia Somerset. 6. Foreshadowing to Breath of the Wild. This can really only happen if the game is a prequel, but I think it'd be pretty cool to see some sort of dream sequence or prophecy or something that could be used to predict the events of Breath of the Wild in a prequel game. 7. Other Sheika technology that we have never seen. The Guardians, Divine Beasts, and Shrines had a really cool and unique art style that I loved, and I'd love to see more of it put to use with other Sheika tech and other creatures in another game. 8. Being able to pilot a Divine Beast. We didn't really get to see much of what piloting a Divine Beast looked like in Breath of the Wild. Even the DLC, which tried to help answer some questions, only raised more. I hope this next Zelda game will allow us to fully move the Divine Beast in some sort of boss battle fashion. 9. Other incarnations of the champions. During Impa's cutscene, we see on the tapestry 4 other champions alongside their Divine Beasts. This would be amazing to see in a prequel game. And I don't think that they should look exactly the same as the future ones, but some similar features would be kinda cool. Maybe this version of Revali wouldn't be such a little bitch. 10. Link and Zelda will probably look the exact same. Aonuma himself said that Zelda was the hardest character to get a look for. They wanted to create a figure that would last inside the minds of the players. After all, it is the Legend of Zelda. She should be the most memorable, and I doubt they throw out such an iconic look for something that could turn out subpar. I hope this one sticks. Link I'm not so worried about since he looks basically the same across all games, but Zelda always looks different in each game. I hope they keep her image and features more or less mirroring her Breath of the Wild counterpart. I think that this would add more depth of character to her for being a reincarnated goddess Hylia. 11. More prominent use of the Triforce. We literally got nothing about the Triforce in Breath of the Wild. All that was shown was in a flashback where Zelda held up her hand and it showed the Triforce on it. The Triforce is a huge integral part of the Legend of Zelda series, and I think that they should keep that in as a staple throughout the rest of the game. And now for the name. Again, I have absolutely zero bearing on what Nintendo is going to call this game, but I still think it'll be fun to make a prediction and see either how close or how far I was off come a few years. Well, here's my prediction. I believe the next Zelda game will be titled The Legend of Zelda: Secrets of the Sheika. Secrets might be of a bit of a strange word that could be changed for something else, but I'm fairly confident that the word Sheika is going to play some prominent role in the title. Well, that's it. Those are my predictions for the next 3D Legend of Zelda game. I'm excited to see what comes next and what is unveiled by Nintendo. If Nintendo does keep up with their Zelda release cycle, we should be getting this game around 2021. But since they're going to be using the same engine and everything, the game might get done faster and maybe we'll even get an early release date. Thank you all for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing because it means a lot and it would help the channel out a ton. Please also check out some of my other social media pages linked in the description. And until then, I'll see you next time.